We are going to turn these 4 pounds of tomatoes into pizza sauce. Super easy. Once you wash your tomatoes, you are getting ready to start. You're going to need a few other ingredients. You are going to need apple cider vinegar, garlic, salt, basil, oregano, red pepper or chili flakes, and minced or diced onion flakes. Dice the tomatoes. They do not have to be super small. You are going to use an immersion blender or an actual blender later to smooth this out, and they are going to cook down a lot. You are also going to see here the skins are on my tomatoes. I don't take them off. I think that's an awful lot of work, especially when you are going to be using an immersion blender to smooth this out anyways. The recipe calls for a half a cup of cider vinegar, 1.5 tablespoons of oregano, 1 tablespoon of basil, 2 tablespoons of garlic and a tablespoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. I've made this recipe before. I do like it. However, personally, I prefer more spices. So I'm going to alter the recipe. I'm going to include in minced onion, and I'm going to increase the spices, perhaps doubling the oregano and the basil. I was using dried garlic for this recipe, and it's a blend with salt, so it's hard to measure out the 2 tablespoons and the 1 tablespoon. So I've just decided to add a little more fresh garlic. In here is 2 tablespoons of minced onion, an additional tablespoon of oregano, and an additional half a tablespoon of basil. It's really a very basic recipe. So I have everything in the pot here. I haven't turned the pot on yet. Just kind of giving this a stir to stir the vinegar, the tomatoes, the spices. We are going to start this. We're going to bring it to a boil, and we're going to bring it to a hard boil for 30 minutes. And then use the immersion blender and continue to boil for an additional 30 minutes. But you want to watch the stove closely because once it's thicker, it's a lot easier to scald to the bottom of the pot. Once I gave it a really good stir, you can see that the juices from the tomatoes are already combining with the vinegar. This is going to cook down beautiful. And of course, tomato or pizza sauce is a thick sauce, so you want to make sure that you blend it well, but that you also follow the cooking time, because the longer you cook it, the more liquid evaporates out of the pot and will leave you with a thicker paste or sauce. This is slowly starting to come to a boil. You can see how this is quite a bit thicker. It has been boiling and lots of the liquid has already boiled off. This is it's over 25 minutes. We haven't quite hit 30 yet. This is my immersion blender. Some people call it a hand blender. I have the heat off, but the burner was so hot it is still slightly simmering there. I am going to give this a really good blend and then put it back on to simmer for another 30 minutes. And you can see that this is getting quite thick. So you can see the consistency is quite a bit different now since I blended it. I'm going to turn the heat back on and simmer this on low for an additional 30 minutes. And this is where you've really got to watch to make sure that it doesn't scald to the bottom of your pot. We have about another 15 minutes left to go on the slow simmer. You can still see quite a bit of liquid here on the top, so that's good. We're going to boil that off, simmer that off. Almost ready to go into the bottles. Almost. This recipe makes 4 250 milliliter jars. I have my jars prepared here, and I have an extra one. I always want to have an extra one just in case there's more than what you were thinking. And here's my finished product. 4 jars of pizza sauce. Really exciting. We eat a lot of pizza sauce in our house.